In today's episode, we'll be discussing the meeting between Putin and President Trump, but more importantly, the reaction from mainstream media. I guess they didn't get their way. So what they're doing is throwing shade at the president, and we will fact check a lot of it. So as always, I'll show you what both sides are saying, and then I'll give you the bottom line.
I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump is saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, business-like and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine.
All right, so this video truly represents why we do this show, because I get to show you both sides to this story, and they couldn't be farther apart, okay? So bottom line up front, we know this meeting was not necessarily to get a ceasefire deal. This meeting was about making sure that Putin and Zelensky would actually sit down. And if the president has to apply some level of pressure or leverage to get Putin to do that, then he wanted to do that. And the fact of the matter is, according to the left, they believe Putin steamrolled the president. They're freaking out because they weren't able to ask questions. But the most stunning thing that you just heard in that entire clip was him confirming that he would have never invaded Ukraine if it was Donald Trump in the White House in 2022. That is just stunning. And of course, they're going to ignore it, by the way.
But the big picture is that this is the end, from Putin's perspective, of his international isolation. He's welcome onto American soil for the first time in almost 2 decades outside of the UN. And he gets a warm welcome from Trump and gave nothing in return, stuck to his hardline positions about Ukraine, and he walks away with no sanctions against him, evading sanctions for the 4th time. He walks away with no ceasefire, vague discussion about an agreement that nobody understands. And he's in a stronger position than when he arrived. And Trump, frankly, it's not clear what he got, except some, backhanded BS about how a war wouldn't have happened if Trump had been president, which is something Trump loves to say. And that literally might be the only thing Trump got out of this whole charade.
All right, so there's so much more to get to, but before we do, let's hear this message from today's sponsor, Home Title Lock. If you're a homeowner, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they take out loans using your equity or even sell your property, and you won't even know it happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice. That's why I partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code DEVORY at HometitleLock.com and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That includes 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. So don't be a victim. Protect your home equity today by going to HometitleLock.com using promo code DEVORY. That's HometitleLock.com. Promo code DEVORY. Okay, so as usual, I'm always going to show you what both sides are saying. Obviously, they want the president to fail. No question about it. Number two, Susan Rice, no one cares about your opinion. The fact of the matter is you're salty because Putin said that publicly. He confirmed exactly what President Trump has been saying. And for the record, that's what history has shown. Who were the presidents when Russia invaded Ukraine? Yeah, let me think about that. Obama and Biden. Not Trump. Now, let's circle back to what else Putin had to say, because He suggests that he wants to end this war, but I think we know what he really means. Take a listen.
And I agree with President Trump, as he has said today, that naturally the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Naturally, we are prepared to work on that. I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. We expect that Kiev and European capitals will perceive that constructively and that they won't throw a wrench in the works.
All right, now a couple of things. You heard him use the word agreement, which triggered this, I would call it, knee-jerk reaction on social media where people said an agreement has been reached. No agreement has been reached, ladies and gentlemen. No agreement whatsoever. What they did agree on is what Russia requires and what the United States requires, and that we need to move this along. That's what the agreement sounds like to me. Now, of course, I'm not in the room, neither are you, and 99.9% of people on social media. But if I'm reading from what President Trump said and I'm reading from what Putin said, that's what it seems like to me. Again, and I keep having to say this, the decision makers in all of this is not President Trump. It's Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. They both have to get on the same page. So when you see how Democrats react and mainstream media reacts, which we're going to get to here shortly, you can't help but wonder, if you guys want this war to end, why don't you be the president of the United States if you think you know so much? Because that's really their attitudes here. Okay, now let's hear from what the president had to say. Take a listen.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Radcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today.
Okay, guys, listen. A series of things are true at the same time. One, Democrats want the president to fail and get embarrassed in all of this. Two, mainstream media is upset because they were not able to ask questions during this press conference, which we'll get to. But it's funny because they were barely able to ask questions when Biden was the president, which we know why. Three, this is not President Trump's war, okay? And what I mean by that is Russia invaded Ukraine under Obama and Joe Biden, not under President Trump. Four, people do want President Trump to clean this up. And I think a part of him wants to get that win under his belt to say, hey, I'm the one that brought this to an end. But at the same time, it's not necessarily my utmost responsibility to do so. It's between Putin and Zelensky to figure that out. And I think that's exactly what the president had to say on Air Force One after the meeting. Take a listen.
It's not for me to negotiate a deal for Ukraine, but I can certainly set the table to negotiate the deal. And our next meeting will have President Zelensky and President Putin and probably me. I'd like to focus on doing our country, but, I get these interruptions. I've solved 6 wars in 6 months when you think about it.
Yeah, so, that's the president being very transparent about how he feels about all this. It's a distraction. And I agree with him. America first is a real thing. He'd rather focus on America, which he's been doing. This entire stuff that's going on around the world, it becomes a distraction. That's why I think most people in Congress, they transform that distraction into a way to get money and more power and influence. That's why they would happily continue to fund this war through Ukraine if they could. So let's thank the president for being more smart and honest about this. Okay. So let's also get to the hysteria. I think it's a great time to do that. Now, Fox News happens to have a correspondent who was there, and she's just triggered by the fact that she was not able to ask questions. She also found it unusual the way the press conference started. I mean, she's just negative Nancy all over the place. I'll show you that clip, and then we'll get to the point where she gets fact-checked by her own network. Take a listen.
It was just very unusual, atypical, and I think we're all awaiting, the readout, because the way that it felt in the room was not good. It did not seem like things went well, and it seemed like Putin came in and steamrolled, got right into what he wanted to say. And what was really stunning to me as someone who's been in a lot of these press conferences is there were a few things that were very unusual. You had Putin come out and address the press first. I mean, we are on U.S. soil here, and that left the media scrambling to get their headsets in. Usually it is the leader of the country, the host country of a summit, that speaks first and addresses the room in their language. But Putin started right off in Russian, and we all had to get our headsets on and listen to him rattle off this diatribe about the history of the U.S.-Russia relationship, making some allusions to something that we didn't get many details on, but also, without knowing the full background of it, there was something that he said that was a little bit alarming, I thought, that seems like some of the things that he has done in the past, setting up false flags and that kind of thing, saying that we hope that Ukraine doesn't do anything to sabotage the progress that we made today.
Yeah, so this is why people hate journalists and why they really hate the media. What facts, data, statistics, images, videos, audio tapes that supports what you stated? Because you're supposed to be the expert there on the ground, which means you have a high level of responsibility to tell the truth. So you're telling me that President Trump got steamrolled based on what exactly? You weren't even in the meeting. But this is what the media does when they don't get their way. And it's easy to do because they're all in the habit of doing it, which is to criticize Trump. It's the easy thing to do. The hard thing to do would be like, hey, guys, we don't really have a lot of information about what went down. I do understand that the way this went was unusual. It doesn't normally happen this way. But so far, let's wait to hear from the president himself. That's not the attitude. Now, of course, what's funny is Fox News didn't let her off the hook. They actually corrected her based on what the president said. Take a listen.
Said at the end of his written remarks, and he also said in a scale of 1 to 10, I give today a 10. So that's the president grading what he thought of the meeting. By all of our standards, isn't a news conference.
That's excellent news, and exactly what we needed to hear from the president, because obviously there's a reason why he allowed things to happen the way that they did. He allowed Putin to address the world here and take the stage, even if there were no questions asked by the press. There was a reason for that. We didn't get a lot of explanation in the moment as to why that happened, so I'm happy to hear that the president feels good about the progress that was made today. He did say that he needs to call Zelensky and call up NATO allies and give them sort of a readout of what happened.
Well, imagine that. She changes her tune after she's corrected on what the president had to say. I just find it fascinating how these journalists work and operate. I get there's a certain way of doing things because that's the way they've always done them. But at this point, it's like they bailed on the integrity part of their job, right? They bailed on just plain old common sense. Listen, man, you don't always have to get a soundbite, okay? Just tell the truth. And if you don't have the information, just say, hey, we don't have the information. I don't understand why it's so hard for them to do that. All right, so then we go to this next one. She's on ABC News, Mary Bruce, and she has the same negative Nancy attitude. Take a listen.
What is the progress? That is the big question, and one that we still do not have the answer to. This was incredibly vague, and I have to say, with quite literally the entire world watching, with the future of Ukraine hanging in the balance, to not have any clarity here is pretty astounding. Now, President Trump said he was going, obviously, to be speaking with Ukrainian President Zelensky. He was hoping that coming out of this meeting that they were going to have a ceasefire and that he was going to be announcing a trilateral meeting, that he was going to be announcing that they were finally going to get Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky in the same room. It seems we are still a ways away from that, David.
Okay. Now, here's the other thing about me. I don't understand why the media has this certain level of entitlement, like the president is supposed to give you all these secret details to what took place. I mean, why would you do that in the middle of a war when you're talking about negotiating a potential peace deal. I wouldn't do that. If you were in the military, you wouldn't do that. It's just fascinating that that always happens. And so this takes me to the reality that just maybe the president knows exactly what he's doing, and that maybe there are bigger things at play here besides Ukraine and Russia. And just maybe the other people that were in the room, like the CIA director, John Ratcliffe and Marco Rubio, and people from the Russia side, they probably talked about other things as well besides Ukraine. So as much as the media wants this to be all about a ceasefire deal, which again, it wouldn't make sense that there would be a ceasefire deal between America and Russia. No, that deal has to happen between Zelensky and Putin. They have to have that conversation. It's fascinating that that's the media's expectation. Now, here is a different opinion about what happened coming from Fox News, and I think they actually nail it. Take a listen.
No kidding. I think it's a huge win for President Trump, for the United States. There is but one superpower in this world. It's the United States of America, both militarily and economically. You had the visuals on the military side, but both President Putin and President Trump talked about the economic strength. I also don't think this is all about Ukraine. I think they probably had a discussion that was much broader than that. I think this has to do with China. I think it has to do with Israel. I think it has to do with where Vladimir Putin...
You think they talked about all that?
I think they do mention that. I don't think they go 3 hours
or do you think
with
focus?
maps. Well, because I think they actually go through and they want to talk about all of these places on where Russia is in the world. And we can push Russia around, because if Donald Trump decides to turn that knob and say, you're no longer going to be a participant in the world economy, then you're going to fall apart. That's why President Trump holds all the cards.
And that's why John Radcliffe going, don't you think, Jason?
Yes.
John Radcliffe going is important
Howard Lutnick.
because he knows what's going on in Russia.
That's
he
right.
has the intelligence. So he says, listen, I know what he's telling you, Charlie Hurt. Radcliffe could say, but I'm going to tell you the reality, what's really happening in Russia. And the CIA knows.
Now, let me show you another example of how delusional these people are on the left about this meeting. This little kid by the name of Harry Simpson writes, this is how an American president should treat Putin. No laughs, no funs, no handshakes, no casual conversation. You treat him like the war criminal that he is. Instead, Trump rolls out the red carpet and embraces him. Now, what's funny, if you're on X, you already know what's coming. Gunther Eagleman did this. Here is Obama shaking Putin's hand and smiling. And there's more. Here is Biden doing the same thing, Hillary Clinton doing the same thing, Bill Clinton doing the same thing. I mean, we can go on and on and on. The point is, there's a double standard when it comes to President Trump surrounding this meeting and all really future meetings that will take place with Putin. They're pissed off that he met with Putin to begin with in Alaska. It's almost if, as I continue to say, they want the president to fail. But he's not going to do it because that's just not who he is.
Completely transparent with our viewers. We were prepared for the possibility of a minimalist outcome. We were also prepared for the possibility of a maximalist outcome. We have maps of Russia and Ukraine such that if we were going to be talking tonight, we'd have Ali Velshi at the big board walking us through which territories were where and why they were of critical need and want to both. We had full screens about what membership to NATO means to Ukraine. There was so much that could have been discussed tonight, including Donald Trump saying if he is not willing, he being Putin, willing to agree to a ceasefire, then there are going to be consequences. We had lists of tariffs and secondary tariffs pulled up, the possibility of sanctions. It is not clear that any of that was discussed. It is possible we were more prepared for this meeting than he was.
Okay, so at this point, there's definitely much more to show you, but it's going to be the same rhetoric from mainstream media. It's all doom and gloom. You had a clip from John Bolton says, yeah, now all the military secrets are out because Vladimir Putin came to Alaska on a military base. I mean, I can keep showing it to you, but I think you guys know exactly what's going on here. One, the media is pissed off because he met with Putin in America. Two, they're also mad because President Trump is the president. Three, they're also salty because they know this did happen under Joe Biden and Obama, and they don't want to admit it. And when Putin brought it up publicly, I know they didn't feel right about it. Also, they're pissed off because they weren't able to ask questions at the press conference. And they're mad because Putin went first, and normally President Trump would go first. So for the media, it was a bad day for them. And so what do? They throw all that negativity towards the president. And in the end, that doesn't benefit me and you, because we have people in front of a camera who are talking to millions of people, undermining the president of the United States and rooting for him to fail. That's the bottom line here, guys. And ultimately, this war is only going to come to an end because of some leverage that President Trump is able to apply. But at the same time, more importantly, Zelensky and Putin actually come to an understanding that they can compromise on something, because that's how all deals are made. There's a compromise somewhere. And I don't think they're there yet. And quite frankly, the expectation should be that they may not get there when we as Americans believe they should get there. And that's why we should be more focused on America first and not on Ukraine first, no matter what Democrats try to tell you. All right, so that's enough of me ranting. Let's hear from you guys in the comment section below. Did you watch this live? I know it took a long time for them to come on. I was sitting there waiting for at least 2 hours before they actually spoke. Let me know your reactions to all of this. Do you see it the same way that I do? Just give me your analysis in the comment section below. Okay, so now this takes us to our next video. D.C. Mayor, the D.C. Attorney General, they're now suing the Trump administration because President Trump wants to make their streets safer. And I think you'll be shocked by their reasoning on why they're suing the Trump administration. So if you missed on that story and more from earlier today, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.